Welcome to Audibly Haunted. I'm your host, Ani Kachadorian. The paranormal is all around us. Sometimes, it's the lady in black that haunts your basement, or maybe the dark shadows that lurk out in nature, or maybe places of the past. And sometimes, the supernatural, the unexplainable, live within the pages of the books upon your shelves. Here at Audibly Haunted, we dive into different haunted literary works, myths, and folklores every week, simply trying to, make sense of it all. You can find Audibly Haunted on Instagram at Audibly Haunted, and you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Again, welcome to Audibly Haunted. So, let's dive into that.
Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about The Black-Eyed Kids, Part 2. Let's get started. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing tonight? I hope y'all are doing good. I am drinking something new. It's called the Jack Daniel's Watermelon Punch, and it's really good. I am drinking it out of my skull glass, so I will post a picture of that. And the shirt I am wearing tonight, I don't know if y'all saw my Instagram last week, but I got some merch t-shirts from the Let's Talk About podcast with Liam and Billy. So tonight I am wearing the pink one, and it says Horror Nights on it in red. I'll post a picture of me wearing that, and so that's the shirt I'm wearing tonight. And so tonight is a continuation of the Black-Eyed Kids. So basically, I found some more encounters with the Black-Eyed Kids, but not only that, it is Black-Eyed Kids, but also I found a few where there were like Black-Eyed adults. So I thought that was interesting, and I kind of wanted to read those too, because there's just so many encounters out there, and they're super creepy. But I decided to, put this together and read this for y'all. So let's get going on that. This first one is called Encounter with a Black-Eyed Adult. 10 years ago, I used to work for Walmart as a sales associate in the grocery section. While I was walking around, putting returns back into the shelves, I felt someone staring at me. I turned my head to the left and saw a blonde, Caucasian woman, probably her late 50s. I was in the middle of the aisle, and she was at the end of the aisle. She looked completely normal to me, dressed normally, and had a shopping cart, but with nothing inside the cart. But when I saw her face, her eyes were completely black. It was the most intense feeling of dread I've ever felt in my life. I have never been so terrified, and my heart just dropped. I turned around and quickly walked out of that aisle. I never saw her again, and I never encountered anything similar again. It just all happened so fast. I cannot explain this feeling at all. It was such pure evil. The dread, the fearfulness was unlike anything I've ever felt. This next one is called I Saw a Black-Eyed Man While Stationed in Guantanamo Bay. I was stationed in Guantanamo Bay in 2011 when I was 19. Because of Guantanamo's reputation, there were lots of myths and paranormal stories that were passed around by everyone as scuttlebutt and campfire stories. I will go into as much detail as I can regarding my experience there that won't get me in any trouble. I lived in a 2-story duplex with 5 other girls with 2 bathrooms. Due to seniority in the house, when the room opened up that had a personal bathroom, I called dibs. Even though it had 2 beds, I wanted the room to myself, and none of the other girls in the house minded me taking the whole room. I had placed my ruck and uniform for the next day on one bed, and the other bed was pushed up against the wall so I could sleep facing the room. After falling asleep, I woke up with my back to the room, which was unusual because when I fell asleep, I'm pretty much dead to the world and stay in one position. I can feel that I'm being watched, but for some reason, instead of feeling on edge, I'm incredibly relaxed. I sit up and turn around to see a blonde man in a black cloak sitting on the bed with my gear on the ground. He was incredibly good looking, but had completely black eyes. I know we spoke to each other for a long time, but I don't remember what about. But I do remember he told me to go back to sleep, and I did. When I woke up, I panicked because everything came flooding back, and my gear that I had placed on the other bed was on the floor. When I knew I hadn't put it down, I was freaked, but got ready for shift and headed out. Now here's the really scary part. At guard mount, another soldier told me about her dream that night, and it was the same thing, except she had the dream a few times before. Later on, a male soldier admitted he had the same dream, except the man he saw had the hood up of his cloak, and his eyes were red instead of black. I never had a repeat of that encounter, but to this day, it gives me chills all over and brings tears to my eyes. Okay, now the third encounter. Bit of a scene setting. In 1996 or 97, I lived in a fairly old, terraced house with a cemetery at the end of the road. Cliché, I know, but it's an important detail. Nothing remarkable about the house or the area, it was just convenient for college. I was up late one night on the PC in my bedroom, which looked out onto the street. It was about 2 or 3 a.m. For whatever reason, probably to give my eyes a rest, I wandered over to the window and looked down the road, in the direction of the cemetery, although it was too far down the road for me to see, and I saw 3 people walking slowly down the road. I could see that they were quite old and appeared to be dressed in funeral clothes, which, given the hour, was weird. There were 2 women and a man. I'd put their ages at about 80, and the woman in the middle was being steadied and guided by the other woman and the man. And as they came closer, I got the impression that she was upset. My first thought was that given their age, she had recently buried her husband, and grief had caused her to behave slightly irrationally, causing her to try to be out near the cemetery at that hour, and that the other 2 friends or relatives trying to look after her and get her home. Anyway, it was all interesting enough for me to carry on watching as they got closer to the house. Just outside the front of the house was a street lamp. I watched them as they made their way past, but when they got to the lamp post, they all stopped, and the upset woman in the middle looked up at me and grinned. This was when things got weird. The grin became a sort of grimace, and if there was any color in her face, to start with, it was now dead white. At that point, I realized I was staring right into her eyes, but her eyes were pitch black. Time sort of dilated as you process more information than normal in the time frame. It was that sort of thing. I'm sure we only made eye contact for a second, but it felt like several minutes as my peripheral vision faded, and I felt like all I could see was the 2 black holes in her face drawing me in. Although the distance between us didn't change, she somehow felt like she was coming closer, and I was kind of aware, although I couldn't honestly say I could see them at that point, that the 2 people with her were just continuing to look down the road as if frozen, but waiting for this woman to finish whatever she was doing. I was suddenly hit with an intense feeling of dread and panic. So I threw myself on the floor. As soon as I'd broken her gaze, I felt pretty stupid that this upset old woman, who clearly needed help, had spooked me so badly. So I looked out the window again, and there was no sign of them. The fourth one. It was 1 a.m, and I was a little late on walking my dog, Dakota. She's a 3-year-old German Shepherd, and very tame for a big dog. Not in my entire time having her have I seen her run up to anyone. She gets very nervous around strangers. I live very close to a large park that leads into a hiking trail. There's a large area that's used as a baseball field, and the big entrance into the wilderness surrounded by the trees and darkness. Here is where I let Dakota off the leash and follow behind her as she sniffs around, trying to find a spot to do her thing. Plus, this was completely out of character for her, and all I could think of was if she goes in there and doesn't come back, I don't think I can go after her. I was not about to get lost in pitch black darkness on a freezing cold night to get eaten by some mountain lions. I'd wait for her and probably call my roommate and tell him I'd be taking longer. But she didn't go in. She was about 8 feet from the entrance when I saw a tall, dark figure calmly walk out of the darkness. Anyone else would have probably freaked the fuck out right there. Some creep walking out of the woods at this hour? Hell no. But I'm in pretty good shape, 6'5", and if anything, people are usually more scared of me than I am of them. Plus, the random weirdo isn't rare in LA, even if this is a middle-class, good suburban neighborhood. So I call for Dakota, but she doesn't move. I have never seen a dog literally follow someone with their gaze, never breaking contact. It just didn't make sense. That was where the uneasiness first kicked in. But it wasn't anything serious. It was just really strange. I started jogging towards her when I noticed it's a girl, about 17 to 20 years old, around 5'9", and from what I could see, she was stunning. Long legs, beautiful body, short dark hair almost reaching her shoulders in a tousled, sexy kind of way. Her long, messy bangs framing her face as she stopped walking to look at Dakota for a second. Couldn't make out her face, really. But I didn't see a death-pale girl in a white dress floating like your stereotypical dead girl. I saw a stunning girl in skin-tight dark jeans, boots, a dark leather jacket, and from what I could tell, she had a light complexion, but by no means did she look like a ghost. My first thought was, maybe, if we talk, I can get her number. But then I remembered this girl had just walked out of the hiking trail in the middle of the night. I start thinking about a documentary about female serial killers I saw once. But even if she was a crazy person, I still have no idea how she could just walk around in there when the darkness was so thick. I doubt you could see 1 foot in front of you. Even though there was something really off about all of this. When I saw her stop to look at Dakota again, I lightly said to her, "Don't worry, she's harmless," to which she completely ignores me and continues walking. I think, okay, I didn't expect someone who walks around the woods in the middle of the night to keep a conversation going. I put Dakota's leash on, but she doesn't budge. All she does is take a couple steps towards the girl, then stops whenever the girl looks back at her. "I think she likes you," I say, to which the girl just looks at Dakota. All of this felt really weird, almost like a dream, like a light feeling, and that silence that sounds almost like you're underwater. No matter how much I tried to act cool, this was not normal. So here I am, trying to get my paralyzed dog to budge, while an intimidating, mysterious girl doesn't break eye contact with her. I was stuck between I'm so embarrassed and she's gonna pepper spray me. When she takes one step towards Dakota, and my dog has her tail in between her legs and is whimpering like she's seen the devil, That's when I knew I had to go. If anyone knows, when something's up, it's a dog. And as soon as this girl is walking again, I pick up my 60-pound dog by the stomach and start speed walking back. I probably looked like a total idiot, but I didn't care. Whatever dreamlike state I was in before had been broken by my dog's attitude. Everything inside me was telling me to go home. So I'm halfway across the field when I put my dog's leash on and set her down. She doesn't budge again. I think, are you fucking kidding me? I will drag this dog. As I turn around to see this fucking girl standing on some bleachers, not even 10 feet from me, I can see her face now in the light. I shit you not, this girl was beautiful, but her eyes were blacker than black. They filled all her eyeball. It was just two shiny orbs inside of two almond-shaped sockets. She looked completely different from the serious expression I could make out before. I fucking swear, I wanted to run, but something made me stay. I felt like I was so scared that I could hear a faint, high-pitched humming in my ears, and my entire body felt heavy. I wanted to run more than anything. I could have thought, oh, a strange chick in Halloween contacts, but I cannot explain the feeling of absolute paralyzing horror I experienced without any rationalization. I didn't have time to. These feelings hit me like a fucking train, and I hope to God I never feel as helpless and mortified as I did then. She was not human. She was not a regular girl. And to make things worse, this girl says in a sultry, sweet tone that I'd expected to sound like something from beyond the grave, "Does she bite?" And still on defense mode, I think I managed to mutter out of my idea of a no. I don't know if anyone else knows what I mean when I say I felt like as soon as I blinked again, she would be standing right in front of me, but she didn't. As soon as I finished saying no, she waited a couple of seconds before saying, "Do you live nearby?" To which I was going to say no, even though I did. But as soon as I went to speak, she said, "Did you drive here?" And I start walking back, trying to distance myself slowly. And again, before I can speak, she says, "I'm going to need to come with you." "You'll let me come with you. That's okay, right?" "It's okay. Don't be afraid." And with that, Dakota fucking books it. I start running like a scared child, and my dog is right in front of me. I don't stop till I catch up with my dog. We're at the other side of the street, and I take this time to turn around and make sure she isn't following me. She's calmly walking back, already all the way to the other side of the park, where she was before. I called my roommate to meet me halfway with the car on my way back home, and I have never walked my dog after dark again. So those are some more encounters with the black-eyed kids and also some black-eyed adults in there. Let me know what you think. That brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the D.E.A.D Podcast. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the D.E.A.D Podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at the deadpodcast1@gmail.com, or send me a DM on Instagram. If you enjoyed this show, please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you are listening on, and be sure to come back next week for my next episode.